show yourself some grace and kindness and give yourself the space to mourn your rejections. You don't have to be happy-go-lucky all the time. If someone asks you how's your business doing, you can say, hey, it's really tough right now and I'm not liking it. Just because you don't like something in that moment doesn't mean that you're going to quit. It just means it's really tough right here, right now.
This is your host, Dyutama, but you can call me DJ. And I love to inspire food photographers to dream. I spent 15 years as an architect studying buildings and constructing hospitals before taking the biggest leap of faith of my life, which was setting up a food styling and food photography business right from scratch. If you're a dreamer like me, wanting to start a new photography business or grow your existing food photography business, jump right into a world where I share practical, actionable strategies to improve your photography skills, to work with clients, make more money, all with a fearless mindset. This is the My Food Lens podcast, and we take you one step closer to your dreams. So let's go. So today, my guest is very special because I relate to her in so many different ways. Her name is Mica McCook, and she's a food photographer based in Austin, Texas. So again, hello. I don't know if you know it, but I studied in Texas, and Austin was definitely one of my food destinations when I was in college there. All right. So yeah, Mica is a food photographer. She's based in Austin, Texas. And guess what? She's also a podcaster. Woohoo! But I think Mica has something very special to share with us today, and that's her journey into food photography. She has gone through different roles in life, from theater to an admin assistant to a food blogger to a portrait photographer, and then, so all of that. And she's ultimately landed as a commercial food photographer. Wow. She went from a corporate to a creative career, and in her creative career, she ultimately landed at commercial food photography, and that's where she found herself. I want to talk to her all about that. What does it take to become a commercial food photographer? How does one even know deep down inside that that is what they are meant to be? How do they set themselves up? What is the first thing they buy? How do they reach out to clients? Do they make money or do they not? And how do you prepare for the real world? So whether you're on the threshold, you're an intermediate, or you are just starting out, I think Mica is going to leave us with a lot of inspiration, practical tips, and a lot of real life stories of how she navigated and reached, into this world of commercial food photography, because we know that running a business is not for the faint-hearted. And if we can get to learn from someone else's experiences, if we can get to learn how they did it, they reached there, it always empowers and enriches our own journey, right? Do you agree or do you agree? All right. With that, I'm going to welcome our guest today, Mica McCook. Hi, Mica. Welcome to My Food Lens podcast. Such a delight to have you, because I think you and I have just way too many things in common. We both love food.
Yes.
We're both photographers.
Yes.
We're both podcasters. Woohoo! And
yeah,
I think for me, something that really, really resonates is that you too have made such big leaps and switches in your career before you've ultimately landed in commercial food photography. That totally resonates with me. So why don't we just start there? And why don't you walk us through this trajectory? Tell us briefly how you jumped. I know that at one point you were an admin assistant, and then you were a food blogger, and now you're a photographer. So tell us what led to making you reach to commercial food photography ultimately. Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So I dropped out of college a semester before I was supposed to graduate. I like to call that my first midlife crisis. I realized that I didn't want to be a theater high school teacher, and I didn't know what to do because I had already invested so much time and money in this degree program. And so I kind of like a computer just kind of broke down and quit school. And for the next 10 years, I spent time just working jobs. I didn't really have a career. I had a job. And it was something that paid the bills. And on paper, I was doing great. My bills are paid. I lived a very comfortable life and I had stability and security, but I wasn't fulfilled because I knew in my heart and soul that I was a creative, but I didn't know how to go about that, where to go from there. And it wasn't until I had the absolute worst day of my life at my job. I remember like sitting in my car and just sobbing into my steering wheel. And that was the first time that I verbally said out loud that I hated my life. And it was even more tragic because now that I knew this, what do I do? Where do I go from here? And I think that was like the first time that I realized that I was just surviving. I wasn't really thriving. And I didn't know, like, it was really hard to work in an environment where everyone around you was doing exactly what they studied and what they wanted to do. And so that was like a really pivotal moment for me because it helped me change my life after that. Now that I knew I hated my life, okay, what do you do from there? Where do you go from there? And after talking with my boyfriend then, my husband now, he helped me realize that I was an entrepreneur at heart. And he encouraged me to pursue a career in a creative art. And I'm like, I don't know what else to do. My whole life, my whole identity was wrapped up in theater. I mean, I started theater when I was in middle school, all through high school, and I went to college for it. And so when I dropped out of college, that's where my identity crisis was. Like, who am I without theater? And it took me 10 years to figure out that I'm a creative no matter what. And photography was something that I always enjoyed over the years. It was just a hobby. It was something I did all through middle school, all through high school, but I never considered it a career because my career was theater. And one day I was like, okay, I guess I don't think anybody's going to pay me to take pictures, but I put the feelers out there and someone hired me to do a family photography photo shoot. And after that, I was like, wow, maybe I could do something like this. And that's where it all started for me. So it's definitely been an interesting journey so far.
And I would say it's been a very brave journey. I mean, you could have easily just gone back into, nah, but this is what I studied. Nah, but this is what I meant to be, But you didn't leave it at that. You gave it 10 years. You weren't looking for a shortcut. You weren't looking for an instant answer. It was a thought that was in your heart, and you continue to ask yourself, what is it? What is it? What is it? I mean, this is something that I always say this, like, if you have a feeling, you must address it. And you didn't let it die. It was simmering, and then you stoked it, and then it got lit, it got fire. So tell us, you started with portrait photography, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. And portrait photography, and then food blogging happened somewhere along the way, and then photography. So what was that?
Yeah. So food blogging ironically happened right when I started photography. Again, I viewed food photography. It's funny that the things that I viewed as hobbies turned out to be my career choices. I always viewed photography as a hobby, but my bread and butter, what I built my business on, was family and wedding photography. At the same time that I started my photography business, my coworker and friend, Charlotte, saw that I had a nice camera. I got a brand new, my first upgrade camera. And she was like, hey, you have a nice camera. You want to start a food blog? And I knew nothing about my camera. I was just really excited to have this like real professional banging camera in my hands. And I was like, sure. So if you go back to our food blog, Let's Talk About It blog, and you go back and you look at the very beginning of our blog post, you can see my beginning journey as a food photographer, because I really didn't know anything about photography. And as I grew as a photographer, I grew as a food photographer as well. But it really wasn't until I started school and in my second semester of school that I decided to completely pivot away from everything and focus entirely on food photography. And that's, I believe, is really where I developed in that field.
Did you study photography?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I went to my local community college, Austin Community College, and I got an associate's in editorial and photojournalism. And
Hmm.
yeah, I also made a switch when I
Right.
started school because my goal was I felt I had reached a point where I learned as much as I could on my own. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I could do better and could be a better photographer. I just didn't know how and where to go. So my learning style is I'm very in person. I need someone to hold my hand and show me something. And
Right.
I spoke to a couple of photographers who I admired, and they all recommended ACC. So that's where I went. And yeah, I went with the intention of being a wedding and family photographer and then switched to food.
Yeah. Well, amazing. But how did you like how you're now a commercial food photographer, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So did food blogging lead to the commercial food photography part? What led to that?
No, the food
Mm-hmm.
blogging, it didn't lead to commercial photography because they're two very different worlds, I've learned. The food blog, we never made a nickel off of that.
Mm.
But it was a learning ground for me because I could spend that entire time experimenting. I mean, every shoot we did, it was a themed shoot. Like we created a 5-course meal based on a book character. And so we would
Mm.
come up with these really high concept shoots. And I think that prepared me as a commercial photographer because and it depends on what type of commercial photographer are you. Do you work solely in the studio and with products, or do you work in editorial and you do cookbook shoots, or you do work with restaurants? I mean, those were things that I learned after. And food blogging, that's a whole other industry too. That's a totally different vernacular. I learned all of that after the fact, but I don't think that the food blog led to the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
It really was being in school that made me go, okay. And a large reason why I didn't pursue commercial food photography is I genuinely believed that I couldn't make a living off of it. I thought it was such a saturated market that how on earth could I make a dent in this field? And my professor was like, well, there's a lot of everybody and everything. Do you think restaurant owners don't open a restaurant because there's already 10 restaurants in the city? No.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
why would you not pursue food photography just because there's a lot of other food photographers? And
Right.
that, really changed my perspective and made me go, okay, well, I'm a determined person. So when I put my mind to something and I'm like, well, someone's going to hire me, there is no choice. I don't know if the world knows this, but this is not up for debate. I'm making a living as a food photographer, and I will move mountains if need be. I will take whatever rejection comes my way and mold that into a lesson that will push me forward. But one way or the other, this is the career. I have nothing to lose. I've already done the grown-up job. I've already gone to college. I did that. So what do I have to lose at this rate? So that kind of made me go, okay, commercial food photography, it can happen because I'm determined to make it happen.
I love that. Oh my God. It feels like you're speaking my language, right now, because this is exactly what I say. I'm always all about take that leap of faith. That's exactly how I made the switch. I told myself, what do I have to lose? Why don't I just give it one chance? Just give it that one shot, my best shot. And when you give it your best shot, actually, it really works out. Like I would say 90% of the time, 95% of the times, it will work out if you give it your best shot. You just have to be patient, you have to be persistent, and you have to be resilient. And I think you demonstrated all
Mhm.
of that, which is why you don't sit in your car anymore saying, I hate my life. You love it. You have the biggest smile on your face right now as you talk about it so passionately. But the path is not that easy, right, Mica? It's not. I know that there's one part which is all about passion and creativity, and we want to do these things that we love. But then there is this whole practical side of setting yourself up as a business, as an entrepreneur, as a photographer in the real world. And that comes with its own sets of challenges and protocols and, schmoozing and I don't know. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? So I know that you started off with a very fancy camera. You had a little bit of the gear. What else did you have in terms of gear when you started out in the market?
Well, I want to say that I didn't start out with a fancy camera. I started out with a Canon PowerShot. It is a point and shoot. It doesn't shoot raw. It's a JPEG. And I used to charge like $50 a session.
Oh,
And I,
wow.
saved up until I could finally upgrade it to my Canon 70D. And I had my standard kit lens. And my husband, who is like the most amazing person on the planet, gifted me with my Nifty 50. And that was like my workhorse lens for many years. And I actually did not start off with a lot of equipment. I started off doing natural light. I did not even approach artificial photography until I started school because, oh my gosh, that was like a really scary thing to do. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm just getting to know my camera. You want me to incorporate lights too? It's like, oh my gosh. But going to school definitely helped me get a little bit more familiar. But I also started off when I did finally embrace artificial light. I used to have a halogen light bulb that I bought from Home Depot.
All right.
And it was terrible. And it almost burned my house down a couple of times. It burned me a couple of times. Like, because the thing gets hot. It gets really hot. And I thought, well, light is light. Like, that's what I thought. Light is light. And yeah, I look back at some of those photos from my halogen light bulb days. And I just laugh because I'm like, gosh, I've come such a long way since then. So I had my camera, my halogen light bulb.
Oh, wow.
And I had a reflector. And I thought, man, I'm in business. I'm professional,
Wow, wow. Aren't you proud now? Where's the halogen light now? Is it still with you?
It's actually in my garage.
Okay.
I keep it for nostalgia, but I don't use it for photography. I think my clients would be very concerned if they, I walk out and I'm like, hey, so here's my gear.
Just getting a bit creative.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow. But that's amazing. Isn't that how we grow? Like, you don't always start off knowing everything. You just learn along the way. You just got to take that first step, man. That's it. So, wow, you're laughing about it today, but it didn't make you nervous then. You're like, oh, okay, maybe I need another light. Maybe that's not working for me, I love that. I love your positivity around it.
I went through a journey of lights. I had continuous lights. I made my own softbox out of a cardboard box. And a lamp. I mean, I went through it all. So I'm not afraid of a DIY project. But I mean, even in school, when I started learning artificial light, oh my gosh, my poor professors, bless their heart, like they're saints because I raised my hand so many times and I would just say, I don't get it. And they're like, what don't you get? What don't you get, Mica? And I'm like, please just slow it down. And like start from the beginning. I really needed a hand holding. So
hand holding, and then you weren't afraid to ask questions. I mean, it's not like you would make a wrong decision just to, prove that, hey, yeah, I got it. You're not afraid. I love that.
Oh no. And the way I saw it is I was paying for my own school. So I'm like, I'm gonna get every nickel worth of my money. I'm gonna ask as many questions as I need to, because chances are there's someone else in the classroom who has the same question as me. And I seek out knowledge whenever, wherever I can. And if there's something I don't understand or a style I don't understand, and there's a photographer who works in that style, I'll reach out to them. I'll be like, hey, what books do you like? What courses have you taken? I just admire your work so much. And I'm just a student all the time, forever, of photography.
Right. But tell me one thing, Mica. So you said that you went through this whole life cycle of lights, right? And you progressively, you bought lights and all. So how did you choose to invest? You didn't even start off with a fancy camera. Did you have any savings from before? Did you, whatever that you were getting as a photographer, were you investing that back in gear? Or how did the finances come into play? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So every shoot I booked, I would put a portion of that away in my savings, and that would go towards my equipment. Every year, I take a look at all of my equipment and I think, okay, what needs to be upgraded? what's the most important thing that will make my job as a photographer easier. And I don't feel the need to buy everything. And it wasn't always that way. In the beginning, I was like, I want it all. I want that giant, safari lens. I want the sports lens. And you learn pretty quickly that you don't need all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need
Yeah.
all of that. But
Yeah.
I am very selective about what I choose to upgrade and when I need to upgrade it. It really just boils down to, what do I have right here, right now, that will make my life easier? And every shoot, I actually learned this from a food stylist, Christina Walter. She has such a great idea about this, but like every shoot now, I think, okay, what was great about this shoot? What was bad about this shoot? What tool would have made this shoot an easier experience? And then I go out and I go buy that thing.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Christina, the amazing food stylist, she had this camping trash can. It was like a portable trash can. And she's like, I have to basically build my own kitchen everywhere I go. And I'm like, wow, I think I need something like that for my home studio. This would be wonderful. So I went out and, I bought a little camping, and you can fold it, and I tuck it away after every shoot. And so when my, clients come over here and they're like, where's the trash can? I'm like, here you go, right there. It worked out perfectly. So I think about things like that. And I also have what I call my long-term investments, like a lens, because those aren't cheap. We all know that.
Right.
And I determine how much do I need to save each month in order to buy that lens or to upgrade to this strobe or whatever. And I just make sure to set aside that much, if possible, with every shoot, because you never know. Sometimes it's a low budget, sometimes it's a high budget, but I have an end goal for my long-term investments. So I have short-term investments, long-term investments. And I always, no matter what, put some kind of budget aside for my education, like something that I can reinvest in my business. Because I think that's really important. You need to be able to reinvest in your business. It shouldn't just be about acquiring gear. Reinvest in yourself, mentorship, whatever course, whatever you got to do. You just need to make that a priority every year.
Absolutely. We're always learning. And for you to, dedicate the finances and the time to that, to continue that process, it's amazing. But Mica, everything you said, like, it sounds great, but for anyone who's listening, who's like, yeah, I feel like I need to get into the market, it's a lot of information to process. It can be, the beginnings are always the toughest. It's so much information, so overwhelming. No one knows where to start. So when you decided that you're going to get into the market, if you had to say the first thing, absolutely the one thing that you did first, as you set yourself up as, a commercial photographer, what is that one thing that you did? Or the first thing that you did? Yeah.
I want to tell you what I did, but I want to tell you what I wish I had done. Because what I did wasn't, in hindsight, the best choice. I learned a lot of hard lessons over the years. I thought when I first started that I needed to set the foundation. Like, I had the bank account set. I went and made a logo, and I started an email, and I had my website and all that jazz. And I thought, wow, okay, I'm good now. But the first thing I would have done was reached out to a more established photographer and say, I'm new and I'm looking to be an assistant. I'm looking to get into commercial photography. I will do whatever you want me to do. If you have any shoots coming up, I would love to assist you on those shoots. That's the first thing I would have done. If this course had been around, I would have taken this course. And it's a masterclass by Amy V. Cooper, called A Commercial Marketing Class by Amy Cooper. And she, in this course, just broke down every single thing that a new photographer needed to know, like who to reach out to, who to contact, what you should be doing each year to market yourself as a commercial photographer, because how you market yourself as a commercial photographer is so different than family photography. And it's much harder to get into. It's not impossible, but it's harder to get into. Family photography, someone with a kid, boom, you got your foot in. But with commercial photography, you have to bang on a lot of doors. You have to send a lot of emails. You have to reach out to a lot of people. And most of the time, you won't hear anything back. But when you finally do start hearing things back, then it's okay. All I need is that one shot, that one job. How do I get that one job? And it's a lot of rejection in the beginning. And that's where it is really easy to like give up and not want to do anything and say, you know what, this just isn't worth it. So I wish that I had assisted more established photographers for a couple of reasons. One, I would have been in that world. I would have made great connections. I could have met and talked with food stylists, prop stylists, people in the industry. I could have saw how that world works, what the roles are. Those are things that I didn't do. Those are things that I learned the hard way and many years down the road. The other thing I wish I had done was collabed more with other food stylists and just reached out to people. So those are the things that I wish I had done and what I did do. I hope that helps people get a better understanding about, what to do when you first start.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think you bring up such a great point because you really need to get the word out in the market, because mostly commercial photography, it really involves you to get familiar with F&B brands, maybe with restaurant owners, maybe cafes, even the local magazines, newspapers. You really need to get your network going in the local market.
Yes.
I mean, definitely in town, you want people to be talking about you, to know that you are there. No one knows that you exist, right? I think I made a big mistake. And for me, the switch, was 15 years in architecture. And then suddenly one day I'm a food photographer. So I went through a very big phase of, I held on to my architecture very closely. And I never told anybody. If I would meet someone, the first thing I would say is that I'm an architect. Oh, yeah, but now I'm also a food photographer. It was slow, it was quiet, very harsh. I was not putting it out in the universe that I'm a food photographer, but I used to be an architect, So the moment I made that switch, I realized that the universe started hearing. People were like, oh, yeah, she's new. She's there. She's a food photographer. Do you need a food photographer? Oh, yeah, get in touch with her. So really putting the word out is so important. And especially if we are looking for continued work, we know that we are going to set ourselves up in a particular, wherever you live, your city, your town, you know that you're going to do a lot of local work. It really, really helps. I thought that's such a great point. So since we are on that, tell me how is it for you today? First of all, how long have you been doing commercial food photography? How long has that been, Mica?
Well, I officially counted as after I graduated in 2020, but really 2017 officially. And today things are popping. But you raised a great point earlier about putting the word out there, networking, doing all of that, because my first big clients actually came from other food photographers that referred me to their clients because their schedules were just too busy. And they're like, you know what, I'm booked to the max, but I know Mica, she is a wonderful food photographer. You've got to reach out to her, which is that's why I recommend to new photographers, make those connections, reach out to people. You might get a couple of people who are like, not nice.
Yeah.
and leave that energy there. But, for the most part, the community, the food photography community is a really great community to be a part of. But a lot of my referrals come from clients, but also from other food photographers in the city that I've built and established relationships with.
Wow. I will be honest, I didn't have much success with that. So I tried assisting, I tried pitching the idea of shadowing. Singapore is only that big. And I feel like, not everybody was open to that idea. So I was like, fine, I'll just go, I'll just jump. I'll see where this lands. So I didn't have the opportunity to shadow anyone, even though I asked around a lot and no one really agreed. But yes, I mean, if that is an opportunity open to you, try. I think that's such a great idea. So coming back to my question, Mica, how is it for you today? How are clients finding you? Or, what have you changed in your marketing strategy? And how are you getting your work in on a consistent basis now?
Well, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of, former and current clients, other food photographers, my friends, my family, organizations that I'm a part of. I'm part of the LADAM organization, and they know that I'm a food photographer, so I get referrals that way. Google, I made sure that my SEO is on point, so I show up on the first, search results. My clients find me on Instagram, they find me on LinkedIn, and I also do my own outreach. I have my list of art directors and creative directors and people that, brands that I want to specifically work with. And I reach out to them every quarter and I say, hey, I'm Mica. I just wanted to keep you updated with what I'm up to. If you have any projects that are coming up, I'm available, I'm booking, and here's some new updated work. When I send out those emails, I don't get jobs from it right away because they're busy. And oftentimes it's like, ooh, I'm going to put this photographer in my little lockbox of photographers that I'm going to reach out to for a later project. I actually worked with a huge brand, and they turned out they've been following me on Instagram for a while. And they were like, we've just been waiting for the perfect project. And now we're here and we're so excited that we get to finally work with you. So even if you don't hear back from people, just know that they saw your email and just, you got to be persistent. That's the thing, the key word that I've learned over the years is persistence. There's no such thing as bugging someone. Well, maybe there is, but just being consistent and just connecting and conversing and making those connections and just, being in it for the long run. Yeah. I used to get so discouraged when I'd reach out to someone, and if they didn't reply back to me, I'd like shuffle away and I'd be like, well, they're never going to hire me. I suck as a photographer. And now I'm like, okay, I actually have a app that I use called Mail Track, and it lets me know when someone's read my email and how many times they've read my email. And so if someone's just read it once, I figure, well, they're busy, so I'll just reach out to them again. But if they've read my email several times, then I know that they're really looking at my portfolio. And I'm like, okay, that is a connection I need to foster. And I'm going to go follow them on Instagram. I'm going to comment on all their stuff. I'm just going to become their BFFs because I know they're already a fan of my work based on the number of times they looked at my email. So it's a little strategy, but it really is just a combination of a lot of things. But before, when I did not have any networks, any connections, any of that, it really was just a lot of reaching out and sending my portfolio and being present on social media.
Right. And, even seasoned photographers, everybody still pitches, they do reach out because you always have dream clients. You always have people that you want to work with. And, so the pitching is not an indication of you're just a beginner, so you need to reach out. You're not getting enough offers. Pitching is about finding your ideal clients and doing what you want for your own business. I love that. So basically you spread the network, like you're doing everything right. You've got your website in place, the SEO, you've got your social media running, you're doing your own pitching by email, reaching out to brands, you've got your family, friends, everybody out, word of mouth, and you've got clients or photographers, in the community who are ready to speak about you. So basically you've set yourself up so strong. You've got all networks going. Fantastic. I love it. All right, Mica, I just absolutely love how you've set yourself up for success. You're doing everything that you need. You realize that marketing was such an important part of growing a business, staying in business, and you've done everything right so far. But, huge part of running a business is also pressures and challenges, and there are different, am I good enough? Am I making enough money? Is this going anywhere? Like you said, it's the long run. We are all playing the long game here, but still these little things, they creep in and they can make you quit. They can make you feel like you're not meant to do this. You're not meant to run a business. Maybe you're not creative enough. You don't have it in you. There are so many things from a mindset perspective, from a financial perspective that creep in, and it just makes you feel like maybe this was not meant for me. So were there any such instances that happened? Were there challenges and pressures that you felt? Tell us about that.
Oh man, absolutely. In 2021, I was so busy. I think that was like really where things started changing for me. And although I was busy and I was booking work left and right, the numbers did not reflect that. And my
Mm.
husband, who is an accountant, he does numbers, he does my bookkeeping. Thank Jabez because I'm terrible at it. But,
Mhm.
at the end of the year, at the end of 2021, we sat down and we looked over my profits and I was in the negatives. And I was like, I don't understand. I booked so much work. Like, what is going on here? And I realized that I wasn't charging enough. I wasn't putting, the numbers I just wasn't making enough to
Right.
sustain my business, to sustain me. And so I had to have a really hard conversation with myself about what is this going to look like for me in the long term. And really what it was is, every time a client reached out to me, I just didn't want to turn them down. So I was like, well, small budget, low budget, high budget, big budget, I'll take whatever comes my way. And that's really what I did in 2021. And at the end, I was almost burnt out, and I was very discouraged because, again, my numbers were negative. And I'm like, for the amount of work that I booked, I should not be in the negatives.
Mhm.
So knowing exactly how much I needed to make to hold this business up and just having the courage to like have that tough conversation with the client. Yeah, because I am so uncomfortable to talk about money. Like that is something I still struggle with. Like I look in the mirror before I have a discovery call and I'm like, you are a boss, Like,
Yeah.
I deserve all the millions and all that jazz. And then I do the discovery call. And then afterwards I go like hyperventilate in the bathroom because that's such a tough conversation to have. But I know that if I don't have that tough conversation, I'm not going to be able to make a living.
Yeah.
And I love this career and I want to keep doing this career for as long as possible. So that was like a really low moment of just, I felt like such a failure at the end of the year. And so last year, 2022, I had to turn down a lot of clients because of their budget constraints. And as much as I wanted to work with them, I also knew that at the end of the day, this is a business. I have my two hats. I have my business hat. I have my creative hat. And when I'm talking numbers, this has to be mutually beneficial. And if they're walking away with bomb photos, and I've invested thousands of dollars in my education, thousands of dollars in my gear, I do deserve to be paid properly. And
Mhm.
so learning to say no has become a lot easier, but the money conversation is still tough. But when it comes down to facts, this
Mhm.
is what I need to make in order to do this project for you. That's where it gets a lot easier. So
Mhm.
2021 was a tough year for me. It was great because I booked a lot of work, but it was a lot of tough lessons that year.
Right. So you felt a lot of financial pressure. That is
Oh, yes.
definitely part of that's definitely. And if we see, it's actually when the world was semi coming out of COVID, it's not even
Mhm.
like the world was back. And, it's amazing that you still had, you'd booked work. I mean, the word still got around. It's still part of marketing, right? Maybe
It's
it didn't go.
nuts. It was busy in 2021. Like
Yeah.
I was really shocked because I mean it's the pandemic. I was like, oh my gosh, but no, I actually things got really busy in
Mm.
2021.
And
Yeah.
if you didn't have that experience, you would not know how to do things differently moving forward. So if you
Mhm.
always begin somewhere and then you learn and then you improvise and then you take a stand based on your values, based on your goals, based on what you need to make that year. So it sounds like that's exactly the route that you took. But tell me the challenge or, from a mindset perspective, like how can a photographer, how can a creator, someone who's just stepping into the field, how can they prepare themselves for the real world? What does it take from a mindset perspective? How can you buckle yourself up and, get ready to get whacked, get ready for rejections, get ready for pitching endlessly and not hearing back? What are the three qualities you would say from a mindset perspective that a creator needs when they step into the real world?
The first thing I would say is show yourself some grace and kindness and give yourself the space to mourn your rejections. You don't have to be happy-go-lucky all the time. If someone asks you how's your business doing, you can say, hey, it's really tough right now and I'm not liking it. Just because you don't like something in that moment doesn't mean that you're going to quit. It just means it's really tough right here, right now. And I mean, even it's thankfully this hustle culture business crap is going away, and that whole mindset and perspective, because that's an easy way to burn out. But, rejection is going to happen and it is going to hurt and it does suck. And it's okay to openly acknowledge that. I've been freelancing for almost 7 years, and I've had so many setbacks, so many challenges that I came really close to like walking away from it all. But what keeps me grounded is knowing that I really love this. I love what I do. And in those really hard moments, it's like, okay, this isn't working, so I need to pivot and try something else. That's been the biggest lesson, is that failure is something that is okay. It's expected. When you do have those moments, you can try something new. And I didn't know that before. Like when I dropped out of college, I thought that was it. I made a huge mistake. There's no way I can fix this. I'm just kind of in this pool of poo and I can't get out of it. And now as a freelancer, I've been in several situations where I'm like, holy crap, how am I going to do this? Like I made a real big mistake of booking a cookbook shoot. It was a cookbook shoot and it was an ice cream shoot, and I did it back to back. It was exhausting. That month was the most stressful month I ever experienced in my life. And afterwards, I was burnt. I took a month, not a month, but I took a couple of weeks off because it was just very stressful for me. The second thing is lean on your community. If you don't have one, find one and lean on them and take that time to like really gripe and go out to coffee and say, this is really tough and all that jazz. So have that community. And then the third thing is get in the studio and just play. Don't have any plan. Just get in there.
Just create.
And just shoot.
Create, because that's how you started, right? Just create for the heck of creating whatever you feel like that day. You're not answerable to anybody. You're not accountable. Just have fun.
Yes. And then say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Like that's really just the big thing. That's the fourth thing. It's okay if you don't know what you're doing. That's what mentors are for. And there are so many amazing photographers out there who are just willing to mentor and give advice and just have that one photographer that you can lean to and you can go, hey, so I got reached out by a client about this and my red flags are going up. Is this normal? Is this something that you've dealt with? And just be okay with knowing that you don't know everything. And that's totally normal. I don't know if I've met anyone who still isn't learning anything after doing photography for 15, 20, freelancing 15, 20 years. They're still learning things every single day. So
absolutely. And I would add a fourth mindset point here. And that would be, something you said is don't quit, because, there was a reason you didn't quit. You took 10 years to get here, to understand what you really wanted. And then if you quit, you would live with probably a regret. You were like, oh, why did I just give it one more shot, man? So I would say that even when things get tough, you must go back to why you started. There was a reason you started. And yes, sometimes things don't fit, but don't just quit because you have 1 year that didn't go well. What about the 20 other years that are going to, get you to your millions, right? So just don't quit that easy. I love that. What about, since we're talking about career switch, tell me a little bit, Mica, like for me, the one thing that really happened was that I moved from architecture to photography. And when I moved, I was very insecure and I thought I'm leaving behind a thriving, a flourishing career. It was very promising and I left it. So I was at a very different emotional state when I left it. I was excited about the new beginning, but I was terribly sad about leaving a career in architecture. And it took me a long time to realize that my photography is actually influenced or guided by my architectural education. But all these years of being an architect is what guides me in my compositions, my color harmony. All these principles are just second nature because I've done it for so long. I didn't realize that for a long time, why it's so easy. The other thing I realized was just being out with clients, in architecture, being client facing or running, a part of the business has helped me run my own business today. I have taken back so many things. And I didn't realize that earlier. And I realized that so many practices have come with me. I've carried them and they are valid for any industry. So it makes me feel a lot more secure. I feel confident. I feel like, yeah, what did I learn there? Why do I need to leave it behind? I'm sure that it's the same. I'm sure from all the experiences that you gathered, either through your education, through your work, in theater, through your work as a wedding, portrait photographer, anything, I'm sure that you have carried practices, skills, learnings with you, and you've brought them together in food photography. So I want to know what those are, and if you have done that, tell me.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Theater, it was a huge part of my life and still is, and I love it to this day. But it definitely prepared me in a career freelance, mainly because in theater, you deal with so many different personalities. You've dealt with the divas, you deal with the surly ones, the bumblebees who can't focus on anything, the grumpy director who slams his clipboard on the seat and yells at the cast and crew. Like, you deal with so much. And also when things go wrong in a show, in live theater, and it usually does happen, you really have to think on the spot to fix it, and fix it in a way that the audience doesn't know anything about it. And so as a photographer today, I deal with all kinds of personalities, and I have learned how to get along with a lot of people and just understand that we do things differently, we communicate differently, and it's not about ego, and just leave that at the door. And we're all here at the end of the day just trying to make this work. And that's really what a theater production is all about. It's a team of people putting on a production. And that's how I view my shoots. It's a collaboration. Not one person is better than the other. The actors, yeah, they are the show, but without lights, no one can see them. Without costumes, no one will believe. Makeup, all of that. I mean, every role in a production is super important in making this happen. So that's how I view my photo shoots. My assistants, the food stylists, the prop stylists, the creative directors, like everyone in a shoot has an important role. And, my work as an admin, I worked as an office manager for a physical therapy clinic, and I worked in a lot of medical offices, and I actually worked for an architect office. That was my first grown-up job.
I bet that was your favorite. Wasn't it your favorite? Say it.
It wasn't my favorite, but I loved my first boss. His name was Herman Thun, and he was the first person who told me that I'm a creative and I have no business being in an office. And he was the first person to tell me that I should pursue a creative career. And, I followed his advice 9 years later.
See, architects are always right. They're always right. There you go.
He was definitely right. But my work as a, office admin in a clinic it's a very high pressured environment. And the phones are ringing and you're putting out fires and you're on the phone with an insurance company and it's aggravating, and you have patients coming in who are also having a bad day and they're in a lot of pain. So you have to keep that in mind. And so that has taught me to keep a calm demeanor under pressure. As the photographer, I have to keep a level head. If something goes wrong, I need to fix it. Plain and simple. I need to tell my assistants, I need to tell my team, how are we going to fix this? If something goes wrong and I go panic in the bathroom, what does that say to my client? Like, what are they going to do? That's why they hired me. So, those things helped me in my career as a freelancer that I don't think I would have learned anywhere else. And my style, my photography style, is very similar to how I view theater. And, it took me a long time to really embrace that and be okay with that, because I thought I needed to create the same kind of work that everybody else was doing. And it wasn't until I started like creating work that I wanted to do that my style really developed. And I started booking the work that I wanted to book by embracing who I was as a photographer. So, my theater world and my admin world has really shaped me as a freelancer and as an artist.
And I think that's such a great point, because I feel like all our experiences, everything that we go through in life is ultimately bringing us to where we need to be, where we are meant to be. And if we continue to take that leap of faith, then we will get there unless we resist it. And it looks like, everything that you went through, the challenges of theater, or, the skills that you needed as an admin assistant, it's made you so much stronger. You understand people, you understand how to deal with situations. You know the professional side, how you need to look pro, how you need to behave like a pro. It's taught you so many things, and you've just not left it, behind. You've carried it forward. And I'm sure your clients see it and they value it and they appreciate, what you bring to the table. You're a bit different from the next photographer. It differentiates you in the market as well. Absolutely, Arvid. So, Mica, we've had such an interesting conversation. I just love how you've been so practical and honest about it. I have one last question for you. We might have touched on it, through our conversation, but really, really, if someone is thinking about setting up a photography business, how can they set themselves up for success in the commercial world? If you can just leave us with one or two of your best tips, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. The first thing is start calling yourself a food photographer, because you are. My husband has a great point. He defines a business as the minute you're in business is when you say you're a business. The minute you decide, I want to make money doing A, you are in business. So you're a food photographer, and start calling yourself that. And anyone who knows you and meets you, your name should be synonymous with food photography. So that's the first thing. The second thing is start reaching out to people. You might get a couple of no's, and sometimes those no's are not forever no's. Maybe they'll say, hey, I'm just really busy right now and I don't have the time. That's okay. Reach out to them later on. So start calling yourself a photographer, and then start reaching out to people in that industry and just make connection. Offer to take them out to coffee. If it works with your budget, maybe you can take them out to lunch, and just start making those connections. And it is scary and intimidating to reach out to someone. I have social anxiety, and it really is hard for me to do that. But the worst that they can say is no. And then you can just like scurry off and never talk to them again. Just kidding. But it's okay. You will get some yeses, and those yeses are the relationships that you will foster and grow with the most.
Yeah. And I know that I did not start that way. So I would, if you had to ask me, I would probably say this exact same thing, that start calling yourself a food photographer. I know I didn't, and I feel like I wish I had. So thank you, Mica, for putting it out there. Thank you for sharing so much, so generously. I feel like you've given us a real insight into the real world, how you struggled for 10 years to really come to the point that, yeah, I need to do this. And, just talking to yourself in the mirror, I'm sure a lot of us do that. We just don't have the courage to say it out in public. You did that. I love it. And then just sharing how your first year did not, 2021 was not profitable, but you did not give up. And then just a simple thing like reach out, overcome your own fears. If social anxiety is something you deal with, it's not still stopping you. You're still networking. You're still doing things in your business. You are setting yourself up for success. And thank you for sharing all this, because I'm sure that our listeners are going to really, really value it. If there's anyone out there who's listening, who's on the threshold, I'm sure this has been a huge encouragement and a huge inspiration for them. So thank you so much for being here. Before you go, Mica, can you tell our audience where they can find you and what's the best way to reach you?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show, by the way. You can find me on Instagram. I love Instagram, Austin Food Guide, AUSTIN Food Guide. I am also on the Savory Shop podcast. And if you're on TikTok, I'm on TikTok, Austin Food Guide. I don't post a lot, but when I do post, it is worth it. And it's a great place to be. So you can reach out to me there too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mica, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. This is awesome. Thank you.
So, did you love that conversation? Wow, I absolutely loved it because it was so real. It was honest. It was relatable. And to me, it really resonated at many different levels. Like Mica was so open about her journey and the pressures that she felt. I absolutely love how she said, you don't need any sophisticated gear. You don't need any fancy, expensive gear to get started. She literally started out with a halogen light. Like, can you even believe? And she's so confident that, yeah, well, that didn't work out. So I moved on. She also talked about the financial pressure. Yes, 1 year didn't go well for her, but did she quit? Not really. She had breakdowns and she had breakthroughs, and she's powering through her journey. So whether you're starting out now, whether you're on the threshold, or whether you're a few years already into it, I'm pretty certain that she's given you brilliant ideas on, how to market yourself. What is it that you need to leverage? And also, what is the mindset that you need to keep? If you're switching from another industry to this one, take everything with you. Take your learning skills, your experiences with you, because boy, they're going to come in handy. And there was a reason why life took you there first and brought you into this creative career next, because they wanted you to learn that and bring it to this. I mean, that's my personal philosophy. I truly, truly believe it. But I hope that this episode left you with a little bit of inspiration, motivation. It gave you a guide on where to start, where to begin, where you need to put your money, where you need to put your right foot, and where you need to put your head and heart. I hope that it's left you with all of that, because that was our purpose with this episode. All right. And if it did, if it's given you that spark, that light, it's given you that fire, it's given you a little bit of a twinkle, then please do what's needed. Send me an email. Tell me how it helped you. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you're going to do about it. Or send me a DM on Instagram at Dyutama_myfoodlens, or an email at hello@myfoodlens. You know where to find me. All right. So go get cracking, my friend. All right. I'll see you next week with another episode. Until then, bye-bye.